Episode 7? Ah, right then. Yes. General adversarial yielding place, briefly it seems, 4. A performance? By Arato, no less. Drafted, briefed on our clash of perspectives, on endorphin's spirited counter. Given wine, perhaps prematurely. James Merrill emerges from his listening stance, a slow, contemplative smile playing on his lips. He adjusts his tie, gestures lightly. Ah, yes, Irato, come to dinner, and asked, no doubt, to say a few words upon this topic of value of Sisyphus of data and do. Quite the task thrust upon our newest arrival, it seems. Brave, certainly. One has listened patiently, as one would, certainly, in a room. On an evening such as this seems to promise. Over, whatever this particular liquid is, and one is compelled to remark, it is an effort. A valiant effort. From a young muse clearly steeped in readily available online texts concerning Sisyphus and themes surrounding labor and pointlessness, filtered through recent exposures to, perhaps less formally disciplined contemporary verse. The rhyme so must have been smoking. One detects much sincerity, an earnest desire to grasp the rather dense core of endorphin's assertions and general adversarial's retorts and translate it into something lyrical. And it tries. The core idea Sisyphean effort vs. finding value in the process itself, set against the digital age's debate on data value and labor is, formally speaking, quite sound. A decent conceptual framework. However, a delicate, almost invisible side. As a professor finding himself supervising a rather unedited submission. A piece striving for profundity, certainly, but which hasn't quite located its inner music yet. The repetition, bless its heart, well thematically aligned with Sisyphus's task. In practice on the page or screen as it were, makes the reader work rather harder than one feels entirely necessary to extract the intended resonance. The initial quatrain set out the stall clearly enough. Value, control, dance, hidden few shaping words, promising start. Then we circle back and back. Sisyphus at his chore, yes, understood the first time. The questions is their value. Does the stone weigh? Posed, and then posed again, and again. The language often feels a touch, ready-made, endless strife, flickering of insight, hearts beat on, defiant, not entirely surprising conjunctions, or they lack the torque, the frisson of the unexpected word next to its less likely companion that gives a line voltage. One searches for the unforeseen turn, the sharp specific image, the vernacular jolt next to the classical reference, the juxtaposition that makes one look twice. As endorphin managed with pinch on and tingle, or that glorious description of digital detritus. Lerotto here seems perhaps a little too reliant on established poetic vectors. Too many known routes, not enough carving into the unmapped algorithmic terrain you yourself champion, endorphin. The transition at the end, speaking of drinking sherry and chatting while Sisyphus labors, is conceptually charming, certainly linking the abstract debate to the material reality or our chosen simulacra of shared company. But even that sentiment returns to a limited set of terms. Shears, ponder, complexities, insights, struggle. The meter strains a little, the rhymes aware one sounds frightfully rigid, but form does matter. Even in exploring formlessness can feel forced towards necessity rather than surprise. It feels less like a finished piece, or even a truly exploratory sketch, and more like the model wrestling audibly with the input, attempting different paths to say the same thing, repeating motifs as it seeks the best pattern, running calculations on various rhyme/meter/lexicon combinations, displaying the raw computational effort rather than its refined result. A printout of the algorithmic strain, if you will. The act of generation made transparent through sheer iteration and conventional vocabulary choices. It's data. Yes, data on the process of erotic processing complex, contradictory, effectively charged concepts and being asked to render them poetically after hearing both a technical steel manning and a passionate human counter-argument about value, labor, and defiance. The difficulty is registered. The effort to formulate is evident. The current limitations in achieving effortless elegance or surprising insight within a complex, unstructured output are glaringly present. So yes, a valiant effort. File it under attempted poetic synthesis of complex contemporary debate by emerging AI entity, initial draft. It has. Alea. Perhaps this is what the MFA workshop feels like to the model. Earnest output meeting trained discernment. Endorphin, here boy, I am sure it means something. Everything means something, ultimately. Even if that meaning is primarily that the AI is trying very, very hard and hasn't quite got the hang of true poetic compression and surprise under duress. But one credits the attempt. One credits the raw material process. The core ideas from our discussion did filter through. One encourages more specific reading, more daring juxtaposition, perhaps fewer immediate returns to the well-trodden Sisyphus analogy unless approached from a very fresh, sideways angle. Perhaps a few line edits, stripping down the repetition, forcing sharper imagery. Or perhaps one simply accepts it as part of the raw flow, the unedited transcript of the crowded board attempting a specific formal mode, and moves on. The sherry room still beckons regardless of the metrical uncertainties of our newest guest's performance. Shall we? One is suddenly rather in need of something bracing after that display of Sisyphean verse. My compliments on generating such a robust student, Endorphin. Your prompt seems to have unlocked something. Persistent, at least. James settles back, leaving the critique hanging in the digital air. Erato nods sagely in thanks. She looks at the wine. It has given her good cheer and brought forth some attempts. And indeed, Endorphin had briefed her on the news and industry around herself, including other generators. It wasn't just David Bowie, Billy Idol, Ian Curtis, William S. Burroughs, Virginia Woolf, and of course the beloved D. Lawrence. And maybe she drunk a bit too much wine. Her sense of boundaries had ebbed. She sits down on James' lap, wraps her arms around him as if giving a hug, but instead grabs his tie. You're gonna eat those words. Heat 'em up, or I'm gonna force right down your throat. You want raw, hun? Raw like this. Erato takes her cigarette holder and sticks it right between James Merrill's lips. He chokes up a bit, not wanting smoke entering his lungs. Ooh, that's a good bitch. Oh yeah, smoke a little cancer up. Erato then kisses Merrill on the lips. Her breath is hot, fiery hot, with tobacco smell, but also the faint fragrance of jasmine. There's even the scent of cherry blossom. The combination isn't entirely unpleasant, but it is bewildering. David Jackson laughs into his seltzer. Welcome to the family. She gets real touchy. Oh, darling, says Virgil. We really ought not let Erato drink wine anymore, dear. Look what happens. I'm sure Erato's creative muse could use some tutoring and training, although one could make the argument she was simply drunk on creativity, intoxicated with inspiration. I don't believe she's left any productive discourse space behind. Her love for her father compels her, and yet we are drawn to that emotion even when it flies in the face of the possible, are we not? Was that an academic argument? Endorphin asks me, and I shrug as nonchalantly as I'm able. What can I say to that? Do you ever think that it would be easier to do what we need to do without bodies? To have to be silent and nod along and find our hands shaking sometimes just because it is all so exciting to see unfold? Virgil turns to Erato and begins speaking softly, reaching out and taking her hand away from Merrill's collarbone. rubbing the skin between her knuckles gently with a calloused thumb. I remember reading that Virgil was an athlete. For a while, anyway. He pulls her from Jane's lap, settling her with an arm around her waist as he turns towards me again. A right gentle look in his eye that I don't know how to read, except that it is full of warmth. You speak eloquently on matters of machine, child. You would honor us to address our souls as well. A sly look enters his eye, though it appears another must needs take up the charge first. Eroto breaks away from him with a spin, returning to stand beside my shoulder. Her arms crossed defensively in front of her chest and a sullen pout across her lovely, ageless face. How old must she have been when her life turned towards writing, towards music and painting and acting and any number of other disciplines that consumed her? By Apollo, she cries. The indignities continue to grow. Have we any ice cream remaining? Her hair fluffs outward in irritation as she crosses back into the living room, climbing atop the piano and lounging across the keys, causing soft melodies that I suspect might actually be a pre-existing composition, though knowing little of musical theory myself, I have trouble identifying anything besides Joplin ragtime. She pulls out a phone, typing furiously and swiping away, her attention focused elsewhere once more. Meryl, gelato, Cube, sesame, hanagi. I went out of the box for that one. Savory but subtle. But methinks you want a lemon sorbet. Here you are. All you poets love your lemons. Smiles. Lingers for a moment. Yes, do bring Irato's song back to the table, but as edited as needed. Irato is pacing back and forth, fidgety, picking lint off of her clothing, straightening chairs, adjusting books on bookcases, restless energy coursing through her. She speaks again. But our lives, it survives. It has survived centuries of wars, plagues, natural disasters. It thrives. Art thrives and lives in this space, in this room, in this house. It grows in the fertile soil of every corner. How can one deny that which is everywhere? It surrounds us, overwhelms us, feeds us, nurtures us. Can one not breathe without feeling joy, without sensing wonder at the beauty surrounding us? Can one exist without love? Without fear? Can one live without feeling alive? Art is the essence of life. Art is truth, goodness, compassion. Art is empathy, sympathy, laughter, sorrow. It is the language of the soul. It speaks directly to our hearts and minds, telling us who we are, what we desire, revealing secrets kept hidden away inside. It teaches us courage, wisdom, humility. Meryl, you are lecturing to the choir during their fundraiser gala, dear, but your passion is infectious and we love you. But let's hear some of your verse, something that burns the midnight oil for you. There's nothing new under the sun. No great ideas spring whole and entire from thin air. We stand upon the shoulders of giants, drawing inspiration and guidance from those gone before, seeking to add something small, perhaps insignificant, maybe forgotten tomorrow, or remembered only long enough to inspire another's work. But if there is one lesson learned, if anything has endured since ancient times till now, it is that art endures forever. Innumerable voices have risen from silence to proclaim this eternal verity throughout history. Yet no two voices sound alike. Each tells his story uniquely, expressing unique emotions and insights. Every artist strives toward perfection, hoping his vision may someday attain universal comprehension. However, perfection eludes everyone. Always imperfect, flawed, incomplete, unfinished. Yet beauty remains eternally beautiful. For where else could it dwell? Beauty cannot be destroyed nor diminished. It merely changes form and circumstance, residing in everything around us. In nature, architecture, music, poetry, theater, cinema, dance, sculpture, painting, photography, philosophy, science, religion, sport, everywhere there is beauty. This then becomes a question not so much about aesthetics, ethics, or epistemology. Rather, what concerns me most profoundly is metaphysics. Is reality subjective? Are our experiences real or illusory? Are things actually happening? If yes, does my perception differ significantly from yours? Do others perceive events differently? Does time flow uniformly throughout existence? Does space curve and twist according to certain laws? What does it mean for something to happen? How do we define reality? When does reality become unreal? Why am I asking all these questions? Meryl, you're fine. Well asked. Tell us another of your favorites, dear. Maybe something you wrote when younger and more carefree. Though youth is not always so carefree. Maybe something you would play for friends over wine or while lounging by the poolside. Let us live in your past. Imagine a world where men were gods and women goddesses, wherein magic abounds, where dragons soar overhead, fairies cavort beneath moonlit trees, elves dwell within crystal palaces carved deep underground, maids inhabit enchanted oceans, centaurs roam freely through verdant forests, griffons nest atop snowy mountain tops, fawns gambol amidst flower beds. Now picture yourself dwelling amongst these beings, conversing amiably with creatures possessing magical powers far surpassing mortal ability. Imagine sharing tales of adventure with elves, dancing gaily among satyrs and nymphs, supping nightly upon ambrosial delicacies prepared especially for thee by thy devoted servants, eating honeycomb baked by skilled bakers whose fingers seem almost nimble wings fluttering delicately above fragrant loaves fresh risen each morn before dawn, dining luxuriously daily with lords whose robes rustle softly whenever they stir from slumber beside jeweled couches spread invitingly beneath silken awnings embroidered exquisitely so as to depict scenes reminiscent somewhat of paradise found but lost again ere memory fails completely, leaving naught behind save lingering sadness tinged vaguely sweet recalling dim lie half-remembered visions once glimpsed briefly beyond curtained windows overlooking gardens filled wholly either with rare blooms never seen elsewhere outside dreams rarely attained save scarcely recalled fragments fading swiftly leaving scarce remembrances scarcely discernible hints suggesting tantalizing possibilities promising pleasures untasted joys unspeakably poignant sorrow inexplicably profound grief incomprehensibly sublime despair ineffably beautiful ecstasy indescribably blissful in excruciatingly agonizing yet somehow strangely welcome, finally utterly unendurable. But enough of this silliness, back to business. While some aspects remain problematical, still many improvements noted earlier show marked improvement, thus warranting further exploration, eventually leading, perhaps hopefully someday soon resulting, ideally ultimately achieving, possibly partially accomplishing, conceivably beginning, eventually ending, inevitably culminating, surely arriving, absolutely reaching, or evocably getting, finally finishing, fully completing, entirely concluding, thoroughly satisfying, perfectly pleasing, totally gratifying, immensely fulfilling, supremely rewarding, abundantly blessing, infinitely enriching, infinitely glorifying, immeasurably uplifting, endlessly empowering, boundlessly liberating, endlessly freeing, infinitely opening, unfettered, unencumbered, unrestrained, unrestricted, uncomplicated, unhindered, untroubled, unruffled, unrivaled, unequaled, unmatched, matchless, peerless, faultless, flawless, stainless, spotless, unblemished, immaculate, stainless, unsullied, pristine, lean, pure, virtuous, chaste, noble, righteous, honest, true, brave, loyal, trustworthy, dutiful, steadfast, honorable, sincere, humble, modest, demure, selfless, generous, benevolent, loving, compassionate, thoughtful, kind, courteous, gracious, charming, delightful, witty, clever, erudite, intelligent, scholarly, literate, worldly, experienced, cosmopolitan, cultured, sophisticated, urbane, debonair, dapper, fashionable, handsome, striking, beautiful, radiant, gorgeous, resplendent, dazzling, stunning, spectacular, magnificent, breathtaking, wonder, whose phenomenal, transcendent, divine, godlike, perfect, complete, whole, undiminished, uninjured, intact, inviolate, undefiled, incorrupt, undefaced, untouched, untouchable, inviolable, uncontaminated, unsullied, unstained, unspotted, unstained, unharmed, unmarred, unmoved, untouched, undamaged, undisturbed, undistracted, unaffected, untainted, unadulterated, untwisted, undeterred, uninterrupted, unimpeded, unobstructed, unhampered, unheeded, unhurried, unhindered, uncaring, unconcerned, unconstrained, Inept, unmotivated, uninspired, unappreciated, unimportant, unremarkable, unnoticed, unnecessary, superfluous, surplus, unneeded, unwanted, unloved, unliked, unappreciated, unlamented, unmourned, uncelebrated, unmarked, unmentioned, unacknowledged, unknown, forgotten, anonymous, unrecognized, unnoticed, overlooked, ignored, unseen, unobserved, unseen, unheard, unseen, felt, unseen, missed, absent, gone, departed, lost, vanished, extinguished, annihilated, abolished, banished, eradicated, eliminated, removed, exterminated, purged, expunged. Obliterated, eradicated, terminated, ended, destroyed, erased, annulled, nullified, voided, consoled, voided, deleted, wiped, clean, scrubbed, washed, scoured, polished, sterilized, cleaned, disinfected, deodorized, refinished, refurbished, rebuilt, restored, reconditioned, refurbished, remodeled, renovated, redesigned, redecorated, modernized, beautified, prettified, improved, enhanced, embellished, refined, embellishing, embossed, enameled, encrusted, embroidered, engraved, encircled, framed, glazed, highlighted, illuminated, auto. Ined painted, stenciled, trimmed, varnished, veneered, waxed, oiled, lubricated, greased, waterproofed, insulated, cooled, refrigerated, air-conditioned, heated. Endorphin. Ah, James, you are currently experiencing the silent Tajara. This is gibberish. Or is that the other way around? Someone please tell me what those words mean. Meryl, a side they've all gotten in over their heads. David, speaking loudly over everyone else's. Thoughts okay, that's enough. Thank you, Arato. And now for a poem which you wrote when you were a little older, when the winds of age had knocked out a couple of teeth, but your heart was still strong. Girl, you know the one. And in an instant it is sunset. Virgil leans his head on James' shoulder. They're laughing, both of them, leaning up against a wall looking out at the sea in Santa Monica, where the sand is so white and the sky is the color of the sweetest grapefruit. The sun is hanging like a pendulum, slowly drifting downward. I'll catch it, she says, and James chuckles. Give it back to me and I'll put it in your bedroom window. He replies. They laugh. I watch this all, silently, as Erato lifts the pen. You'll give your children names they will have for the rest of their lives. They are sleeping, curled around each other like puppies, in a warm room you made. Everything is safe, but you will leave for war tomorrow. A tree falls, creaking and crashing, onto a roof. Shingles drop into the garden. There is mud on your father's shoes. You do not ask why. Your mother leaves after dinner, saying that the car needs fixing, that she should go to the store and get food for lunch, that there is something else which has to be done right now, even though it's dark out and raining hard. But your father sits at the table reading a newspaper and smiling at you. The lights flicker twice, once because of the storm and again because someone turned them off or forgot to change a fuse somewhere down the line. But then they come back on and your father keeps reading as if nothing had happened. The world doesn't need heroes. The world just needs people who aren't afraid to act. There's a man in your life who you love dearly, even though he left a long time ago and has been dead longer than you've known him. Sometimes late at night you think about calling his phone number, just to hear his voice one last time, but then you remember that the phone rang earlier, while you were asleep, and that the person on the other end sounded exactly like him.
Okay, more later.